What I'm going to do is, our first question really, is are workers happier in 2015? It's basically a survey we've been doing since 2007 every year. We survey on average about 1,200 to 1,500 workers. We asked them about 35 questions. My marketing manager had a bit of a nervous breakdown when I told her I was coming here this morning giving you lots of the numbers, because we're releasing these in association with a national newspaper in about 2 weeks' time. So tweet away and all that sort of stuff. And I'm blaming Daniel. So just, I suppose, for a bit of make things a little bit interactive. 2 questions we want you to have a think about while we're going through the stats. And we might even come up with a little prize at the end of it for someone who gets both right, or even if you get one right. The first question is, what do you think is the most important priority or most important influence for someone going through an interview process for a company? What influences them most to take a job with that particular company at that time? So it can be things like the office environment, salary, etc., etc. And the second question, if you could choose, and this we asked this to all the people we surveyed, if you could choose anyone in the world to run Ireland, who would that be? And at the time, we started in 2007. The same person has won the survey, or has won that every year, not just by a little bit, but by a lot. Okay? Yeah, so the survey, about 1,200 respondents this year. We asked people right across every sector, part-time, full-time, IT people, sales people, key as well, employed and unemployed. So we bring people in and we say, are you unemployed? We bring them out into two different areas. So one of the key things we look at is job security. So obviously, as we can see here, in 2009, 58% of people had fear for their jobs. As you can see, it's improved dramatically over the last couple of years, and it's down to 35%, so about 1 in 3 people. What happened during the recession for us, as I suppose a recruitment company, we've 14 offices around the country. We have about 50 recruiters at the moment, and we receive about 50,000 applications a year. These type of things have a huge influence, and I was talking to someone earlier on about it. When people don't have job security amongst the whole country, no one moves jobs. So people don't move around, so you get this sort of inertia. And the people at the bottom, you know what I mean, in terms of, you know, those trying to move up the ladder can't move, so people emigrate. And that's, I suppose, what we've seen probably up to 2011. What we've seen in the last sort of 6 months or a year is much more security. People are much more secure in their environment. Our business as a whole is up about 52% year on year. And as recruiters, every recruitment company, not just us, we see things before the market sees it. So companies come to us, they look for engineers, R&D people. So generally, we're about 9 months before ahead of the market. And I suppose we're in this sort of bubble as a recruitment company and recruiters that I suppose we're seeing this stuff, and we're really bullish over the last 6 months. So things have really improved dramatically. And I think everyone in this room should really start to see that pick up from January next year. The next one, will you receive a pay rise? We didn't ask this in 2011 or 2009 because no one was receiving pay rises. What we're seeing now, I suppose, is in 2015 is nearly over 30% will receive a pay rise. This year. Again, it affects the market. I suppose from an employer perspective, it makes things difficult. And you're seeing a lot of things out there at the moment in salary surveys and that, so there's a bit of pressure on wages. We'll see a rise in the minimum wage, I suppose, in January, which I think in general is a good thing. Although back in, I think it was 2006, we had 2 rises to the minimum wage within a year, and it increased it by about 24%, and it was probably totally the wrong time to do it. So when considering a new job, what is your most important consideration when choosing a company to work for? So this is really at the interview process stage. So what influences people? 9.4% said the company's premises and facilities. So I used to work down the road here. I now work in the middle of Tipperary in a sort of in a field almost, and we look out. But I used to work in the IFSC, and we had a fantastic office like this, and we'd invite people in, and they'd look and they go, what a brilliant place to work, like, you know what I mean? But they weren't concentrated on the job or really what the job was about. It sort of blinded them a little bit. 24% said the company's public image or brand. So it's really, really important for employers that their employer brand is strong. And usually the companies that are good on actual branding tend to be fairly good on employer branding. And employer branding comes in lots of different ways, and we talk about that sometimes. How long the company has been in business, so how established you are, tends to have a big impact on the person coming in the door. Again, I was talking to someone earlier on, 7 or 8 years ago, no one cared about that. Didn't care how long you were there. They'd moved for 50 cents. And someone said to me earlier on, someone took up a job, they walked in, they said they needed to take 2 weeks holidays back in 2006. And the company said, oh, geez, no, we can't let you go for 2 weeks. She said, all right, I'm off, I'm leaving, going to go get another job. So that was the type of stuff that was happening, and it changed. So what do you think is the number one influence, now during a sort of a process of applying and going and meeting a company, that influences a job seeker in taking a job? The company staff you met during the interview process. Number one key thing. And what we see all the time, I suppose, because we're in that space, we look for feedback off the individual and say, how'd you get on there today? Well, yeah, it went okay, but the way I was meant to meet John, well, John couldn't meet me. It was Paul, and Paul didn't know an awful lot about the company or the job or what I was going to be doing, and they basically lost him at that stage. So it's the key thing we talk to companies about is making sure that those people that are interviewing for your company know about the job and represent your company and your brand, because you can invest in all these other things, and at the last hurdle, you're let down by the people that are in front of those candidates. We talk to people about how far they're willing to travel to work, and just from an employer perspective, I suppose, you can see there up to more than 38% up to an hour. So what we say to companies is you get an awful lot of people coming to interviews and they're traveling 20 minutes to one job, and they're coming to your company, they're going to have to travel 50 minutes. You've always got to question that. Do you know what I mean? Ultimately, they'll say that they'll travel an hour or an hour and 15 or an hour and a half, but actually they won't really do it for that long. Do you know what I mean? You'll get them in the door, but then on those dark nights in November and December, they turn around and go, oh, they're traveling in the dark and the rain and the snow, and they don't make it. So it's just a consideration to have. So, and this changes. So this is we've just given you this year. What's the most important priority when considering a new job? We ask the same questions every year. A couple of things change year on year, but the number one is always the number one. So teleworking. This is a big thing about 7 or 8 years ago. Everyone wanted to work from home. We're seeing that less now. Benefits. So anyone here from VHI? There was meant to be someone here from VHI, was there? It's actually surprised us. It's actually very, very low down on the list. But people, what we figured out is people expect that. So it's in their head, that's a given. You know what I mean? I get VHI, I get a pension, I get these things.
Sorry, can I just ask, is that not the same for teleworking now? That people, for teleworking, people have just come to expect that it's a benefit that companies will provide?
Yeah, like to a certain degree, I suppose. We've seen a sort of a change. And by the way, anyone that wants to just ask questions as we go along, that's great rather than at the end. What we seen about 10 years ago was a real, I want to work from home, right? So everyone wanted to work from home. What we're seeing now is that companies are allowing people to, spend a morning at home or a day at home. There's less of the always at home and more of the sort of movable sort of thing. We ourselves have an awful lot of people that do that sort of thing. And actually, we get an awful lot more out of them, than, I think one of our best people, I was telling someone earlier on, is I don't know when she's in the office, like literally, and she's easily our best performer. Working hours, 8%. Like, the key thing here is sort of setting it up. But when you're an employer, you're talking to, people, I suppose over the last couple of years, again, it's become much more. We used to work 40-hour weeks up to probably 12 hours, or 12 years ago. Now it's changed. People are working an awful lot more of those hours because they're working from home sometimes, you know what I mean? They're 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, they're working on projects and that type of thing. 10% said job security. This 2015 survey. In 2011, that was up around 20%. So people had this, just job security is absolutely key, as I was saying earlier on. Career path is important. It's 11%. Now, all of these things are, things that people value. They put these answers in. We don't, I suppose, influence them in that sense. Location. Obviously, location is important. You know what I mean? But it's not the number one, obviously, from the point of view of the employee. Salary is at number 2. A lot of people, automatically assume salary is the number one thing that people go for. So anyone, what's number 1?
Reputation as a good place to work.
Okay. What's the number 1 thing when you look at a job? What?
Job satisfaction.
Co-workers.
Yeah. So the job itself, the actual job. We concentrate a lot of the time as organizations all the way down here in terms of getting all these things right, and then we bring someone in and they're doing something they don't want to do. You know what I mean? It's sort of thinking things about things in a backward sort of way.
Does that not go backwards? Sorry, Colin, does that not go back to actually, you talked about playing to our strengths earlier, and most of our lives are spent.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's. I think for us as an organisation, and most of, whether you're small, big, you know what I mean. The key thing is having people in those roles that they're good at, and that they want to do. Do you know, like, if they don't want to do it, it's really hard to get them to perform. You know what I mean? As Henry was saying earlier on, that, you know what I mean. You'll get them to a level, but getting them up those next steps,
There's a question I always thought about, like when working with sort of the Generation Z, or the millennials we call them now, which are the coming into the workforce. Some kids are still in school at this moment in time. Will they have the patience levels to work in a workforce that we would have worked in 20 years ago?
Yeah, I think we talked about having kids earlier, right? I have 6 kids, right? So I know, yeah. It's a busy house, but we have triplets, okay? And the triplets are 10, and they do this thing called C2AI. They've identified as having a little bit of talent in a certain thing, and they go to DCU every Saturday. And then DCU rang us and said, we're running this pilot project of a, and I am digressing here and it's sort of off the wall, but it actually feeds into this thing. Will you participate in this pilot? These triplets of basically doing a Google Hangout every week with this class, right? And learning. And to watch it is just unbelievable. Like, so you have kids from all around Ireland getting a lecture on a Google Hangout at 10 years of age and interacting and that type of thing. So that's really a picture of what the world of work is going to look like, I think, in probably less than 10 years or 15 years. But the funny thing is, Deloitte, there are accountants, by the way, so I don't like giving them promotions because they charge us an awful lot of money. They did a study on millennials and, you know what I mean, but millennials look for the same sort of things as we did. Do you know what I mean? In terms of, yes, they want to be online and that type of thing, but they still want to be able to meet people and, you know, go to an office. And so I think there's a sort of there's a misconception that everyone's going to be working from home at some point. Do you know what I mean? And we're all going to be out there. We're people. We like to be working.
Millennials, I think the difference between maybe the generations is millennials expect, whereas we would have liked to have had.
Yeah.
Like I work in technology industry, and everything that's there it's expected. It's like a given. They see that as a given. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. They're fairly hard work, aren't they? Sometimes.
They keep it interesting, but like they're agile.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're agile.
Yeah. But we've probably as organisations, and we need to know how we're going to manage that. That's the key thing. Like, it's understanding how do we manage that, and how do we make them happier, and how do we, whether it's measurement or whatever it is. I'm big into measurement because you know, of what I do. But okay. If you could choose anybody from Ireland or the rest of the world, now we asked this, remember, 2007, so we're in the middle of the recession. Who would it be? Answers on a postcard, as they say. But, anyone? Did you all read? Yeah. So, so Michael O'Leary. Yeah. So. And it's not just by like a little bit.
Seriously.
It's like massive, right? So we get Obama and we get the Pope, and we have an international audience. So, you know, we've people from like Poland, and we're able to drill down into there. Michael O'Leary, like, do you know what I mean? I would say, I don't know whether I can tell it. No, we do work for Michael O'Leary, right, on another part of our business, on his farm, right. He is unbelievably challenging and whatever, but the key with him is he's dead straight and whatever. I would say be careful what you wish for, you know. You can't really. So really just, I suppose we're talking about being happy and we're, I suppose as FRS, one of the key things is we're a cooperative. We're around since 1980. And we're real traditional. So we brought, I don't know whether you can see this bottom picture, it's not great. But down the bottom here, we brought 50 people to Delphi last year. And we had them run through the bog for about 8 hours. It was just, none of them have made it here today. We've all sorts of new people here today. But it was an amazing experience, I have to say. We had a guy who facilitates the Irish Olympic boxing team, and he's probably busy at the moment with all the stuff that's going on. But he facilitated the day, and he worked with our people, and he really drilled down into what we were doing well, and you know what I mean, and what we weren't doing well. We're not a real modern sort of. We didn't actually have Yammer or tools for communication and things like that. But we're working on something at the moment to improve that. But he asked, sort of like about us, and this isn't a promotion on us, this is about, you know what I mean, I suppose, what our people thought about us, cooperative, nationwide, safe, traditional. Our marketing people, we had a marketing consultancy in 7 or 8 years ago, they were trying to get us to move away from all that. You need to become more modern and, that type of thing. And we sort of, not that we didn't want to, we said, yeah, maybe we will do that, but we sort of felt uncomfortable with it because we're not Google or AOL or, you know what I mean, a real fancy company. You know, we're cooperative, you know, we're in the sort of community. And I used to go to multinationals. When I started for FRS, I'd come from here and got landed in a field, basically in Tipperary, and said, look, put this recruitment company out there. So I started going to multinationals like Pfizer and Amazon, who we work with now, and that type of thing. I'm walking in the door, please don't ask me what FRS stands for. Please don't ask me what FRS stands for. And so FRS stands for Farm Relief Services. So that's who we are and what we do. And so for about a year, I never told anyone what we stood for. And then someone actually in Amazon said to me, sure, you're Farm Relief Services. That's a great story. So then we started to tell the story. And it changed really how we worked, how we got through the recession, and the things we do today. There's one little thing up there, someone put in brown bread, right? And it's like, and
I laugh because we have brown bread every morning at 11 o'clock.
Yeah. Every one of our offices around the country, 24 offices, sit down at 11 o'clock, they sit down, they have brown bread and jam and tea, and they talk. And it's not something we invented, it just sort of happened. Do you know what I mean? And we don't tell them to do it or don't go and do it. Anyway, that's sort of about who we are. And again, like, you know, Jane, our marketing manager, right? So the guys put this together, right? Happy cows make more milk, right? And you think, yeah, that's great, it's really great and groovy and that. And Jane, our marketing manager, you can't use that. Like, you want to talk to multinationals, Colin, on the recruitment side and blah, blah, blah. And so just ditch that. And I was like, well, you know, that's really where we came from. So we're a cooperative. FRS Network, which is our parent company, we now 2,500 people that work across the country through 24 offices. We do mad stuff. Like, we pair cows' feet, right? Like, it's just, that's like, you know, doing a pedicure for a cow type of thing. I'm the only dub that works for an organisation of 2,500 people. Like, do you know what I mean? Monday mornings are bad, or have been bad, until we won the All-Ireland in September. So we're the largest fencing company in Ireland. We do lots of weird, we run some government contracts in the environmental side. We advise farmers. We had people out in Saudi Arabia last week advising the Saudi government on how to do agriculture better. Our recruitment company works with some of the biggest companies in Ireland, and it's gone from strength to strength. And I'm coming around this way. Herd Watch, so is one Irish Times Startup of the Year this year. It's simple. It's just an app that basically allows farmers to basically get their details into the Department of Agriculture and manage their day and move away from paper and stuff like that. And it sort of comes back to utilising people. So the guy who heads that division up is from France. And he knocked on my door in 2004 and said he wanted to work in recruitment. And he said, well, I live across the road. He lives across the road from our office. And I said, well, so he came back and he came back. We got him to come in. He worked for us for 3 years, became our best recruiter. But he couldn't sell, right? So then the recession hit and our IT manager role came free and he took it over and has gone on to develop that business. And then Stephen mentioned Turris Nua, so that's our latest venture. And I can't really talk an awful lot in a huge way about it. We haven't launched yet, but we're opening, well, we'll deliver a service from 38 locations across the south of the country. We'll employ in that business about 540, 550 people who will basically get all the long-term unemployed people back to work, or that's our job. So we'll have 180,000 people coming through the door over the next 5 years. And it's it's been it's 4 years in the making, and all these offices opening up, which has been great. And I suppose Henry talked about something earlier on, and what we're trying to do is not make unemployment a happy place, but make it I suppose, a better place to be, where you can, and Henry talked about individualization, right? So what we've done with people in Ireland who have been unemployed for donkey's years is sheep dip them. So we put them all through the same process. So we're basically going to put individualization into the unemployment market. So Stephen has been in one of our offices in Carlow. So if someone unemployed goes into a Dole office today, they get a screen in front of them, bulletproof glass, I call it. And then a thing comes down behind them, like a curtain comes down behind them. It's sort of weird, like, you know what I mean? And so we've all open plan offices. I think, Stephen, they're amazing sort of place. And the idea is, yeah, for our staff it's great, but what we want to do is when an unemployed person comes in to our office, we want to show them, look, this is different. And we've developed a diagnostic tool with the University of Sheffield and Hallam, which about 130 questions, and it's very, very detailed in terms of challenges and distance for the labour market and all that type of thing. And we'll work with employers, like some employers here, and we're already working with big employers across the country. And when the government are nervous about this sort of stuff, they're like, "Oh, this is a great idea, but say we say this, what's going to happen." So we'll get launched in January, it looks like. So if anyone has any questions, feel free, go ahead.